About what it means to be discovered by someone who is wrong about what they've found. Not wrong that it's extraordinary, but wrong that it's unfinished. About the particular patience of someone who knows who they are, waiting for the room to catch up. About the moment a dominant intelligence stops performing authority and starts offering respect. About an 18-year-old from Dublin who walked onto a set in 1939 and waited, without anxiety, for the most powerful actor in the room to understand what she already knew. He got there. It took him a year. That's the Maureen O'Hara worth knowing. London, 1938. A private viewing room somewhere in the machinery of the British film industry. Charles Laughton is 38 years old. He has already been everything. Captain Bligh, Quasimodo, Henry VIII. He has an Academy Award. He has the kind of authority that fills a room before he enters it and stays after he leaves. He is not a man who watches screen tests for entertainment. He is a man who watches them for raw material. If stories like this one stay with you, subscribe now. Every week, a new story worth remembering. The girl on the screen is 18 years old. Her name is Maureen Fitzsimons. She trained at the Abbey Theatre in Dublin. She has been studying at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama in London. She is, by any conventional measure of the industry in 1938, very young and very unknown and very much at the beginning of something. Laughton watches her for 4 minutes. Then he stops the projector. He sits in the dark for a moment. Then he says, "I want to meet her." What Laughton sees in that screen test is not entirely what he thinks he sees. He sees enormous talent. That part is accurate. And his eye for talent is one of the finest in the industry. He sees presence. He sees the particular quality of stillness that the camera loves, that cannot be taught, that either exists in a person or doesn't. He sees all of this correctly. What he misreads is the nature of it. He looks at an 18-year-old from Dublin and he thinks, unformed. He thinks, enormous potential waiting for direction. He thinks, without meaning it unkindly, that he has found something rare and beautiful and unmade, and that the making of it is a job he is uniquely qualified to do. He has made this error before. It is the error of a dominant intelligence meeting a quieter one and mistaking the quiet for absence. Maureen Fitzsimons is not unformed. She has the Abbey Theatre in her blood. 4 centuries of Irish theatrical tradition, the understanding that a stage is a place where truth is the only currency, that performance for its own sake is the first failure. She has a mother who sang and understood the difference between technique and presence. She has 18 years of knowing precisely who she is, which is a rarer thing at 18 than it is at any other age. And she has arrived in this industry already in possession of the thing most actors spend their entire careers searching for. She is not waiting to be made, she is already made. Laughton doesn't know this yet. Jamaica Inn, 1939. Alfred Hitchcock directing. Laughton producing and starring. Maureen, now Maureen O'Hara, the name she has kept despite early industry pressure, in the female lead, her first major film, his territory, his production, his set. Laughton is generous with her, genuinely generous. He watches her work, and what he sees confirms everything the screen test promised. But generosity for a man of Laughton's particular temperament has a shape. It is the generosity of a teacher toward a gifted student, of a sun toward a planet it believes it is called into orbit. There comes a day on the Jamaica Inn set when Laughton gives her a direction. The scene requires her to be frightened, not performed fright. The real thing, the kind that lives in the body before it reaches the face. Laughton tells her how to find it. He explains the internal mechanism. He demonstrates something with his own face, a brief flash of the craft that won him an Oscar, showing her the path he would take to arrive at what the scene needs. He is not wrong about the technique. He is not wrong about what the scene needs. He is wrong that she doesn't already know how to get there. She listens to the direction. Completely, attentively, she gives him every courtesy of her attention. Then she looks at the mark. She takes a breath. Not the breath of someone preparing a performance, the breath of someone going somewhere real. Laughton watches. What appears on her face when the camera rolls is not what he showed her. It is not his path to the emotion. It is her path. arrived at differently, from a different internal place, through a different set of instincts. And it is, unmistakably, the right thing. Not similar to the right thing itself. Laughton calls cut. He looks at her for a moment. She looks back, calm, present, not waiting for his verdict, not performing indifference to his verdict. Simply there, the way she is always simply there, the way the camera always knows she is simply there. He says, again. They film it 4 more times. Each time she arrives at the same place through the same interior path. Each time it is true. Each time it has nothing to do with what he showed her and everything to do with what she already knew. Between takes he gives her no further direction. He simply watches. He is beginning to understand something. The Hunchback of Notre Dame follows that same year. RKO Pictures, Hollywood. Laughton as Quasimodo, one of the defining performances of his career. Maureen as Esmeralda. Bigger production, higher stakes. A new country. Her first months in America. On this set, something shifts between them. It shifts quietly, without announcement, the way things shift when one person revises their understanding of another and doesn't make a speech about the revision. Laughton stops directing her, not because he loses interest, because he has understood that direction, in her case, is interference. That what she does is already complete before it arrives in the room, and the only thing he can do with his authority and his experience is get out of the way of it. He says to a colleague, somewhere in the machinery of that production, words that will be repeated for decades afterward, "She doesn't need me to teach her how to act. She needs me to get out of the way of the light." 7 words that contain everything. The light is hers. It exists in her independently of any production, any director, any more experienced actor standing beside her with the weight of an Oscar and the certainty of a man who has been the most important person in every room he has entered for 15 years. It exists in her. He cannot give it to her. He cannot shape it. He can only recognize it, which he does, completely, and then step back, which he also does, and which costs him something because stepping back is not a natural motion for Charles Laughton. That it costs him, and he does it anyway, is the measure of how real the recognition is. There is a photograph taken on the set of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Laughton in full Quasimodo makeup, the hump, the prosthetics, the extraordinary physical transformation that cost him hours each morning. Beside him, Maureen O'Hara in costume, looking directly at the camera. What is remarkable is not the contrast between the elaborate artifice of his appearance and the simplicity of hers. What is remarkable is the posture. His is slightly angled toward her, an almost imperceptible lean, the kind the body makes without the mind's permission, towards something it has decided is the center of gravity. He is the bigger star, he is the producer, he has an Academy Award and a filmography that spans 2 continents. He is leaning toward her. She is not leaning toward anything. She is simply there. The people on that set noticed. People always notice, even when they don't say anything. The crew, who spend their working lives reading the invisible social geometry of productions, noticed who the camera loved unconditionally and who it loved with conditions. They built toward her. Even then, at 20 years old, on her first American production, with Laughton's name above the title, they built toward her. Because the camera was telling them to. Laughton watched all of this and said nothing. He had stopped having opinions about how she should work. He had understood that his opinions were beside the point. What she did existed outside the frame of his influence. He could stand beside it, or he could stand away from it. He could not shape it. He chose to stand beside it. This was the wisest professional choice Charles Laughton ever made. The scenes between Quasimodo and Esmeralda work because of what each of them brings separately and what happens in the space between. His craft enormous, deliberate, constructed with the full resources of a master technician. Her presence something else entirely, immediate, unconstructed, arriving complete in every take, like a fact that was always going to be true. Together they produce something neither of them produces alone. Because both of them are completely there, completely honest, and completely uninterested in pretending otherwise. Laughton understood this first intellectually and then emotionally, which is the order in which dominant intelligences usually arrive at important truths. The intellectual understanding came on the Jamaica inset when he watched her find the scene her way and recognized it was right. The emotional understanding came on the ship crossing the Atlantic, in long conversations about the nature of acting and truth and what the camera does to presence. He stopped talking about discovering her somewhere during those conversations, started talking about working with her instead. The shift in language was the shift in understanding made audible. She noticed. Of course she noticed. She noticed everything. But she said nothing about the shift because commenting on it would have been a form of claiming credit for it. And claiming credit for someone else's growth was not something Maureen O'Hara did. By the time they arrived in America, the transaction was complete. Not the transaction of the original framing, discoverer and discovered, mentor and student. The transaction of equals who had found each other through shared work and arrived at mutual respect that neither of them needed to perform. Laughton would describe her differently as the years passed. Early, extraordinary raw material. Later, one of the most instinctively truthful actresses I have worked with. Later still, in private, the one who never needed anything from me except the room, and who made better use of the room than I did. That last formulation is the accurate one. He gave her the room, eventually, the room without interference. It was the most valuable thing he gave her, more than the introduction to the studio, more than the passage across the Atlantic, more than the name above the title that gave her work an audience before she had built one of her own. He gave her room, she filled it. That is the whole story. And the fact that he was finally wise enough to give it is why they remained friends until the end of his life. Generosity that asks for nothing in return is the only kind that lasts. Laughton eventually learned to be that kind of generous. It took him a year to understand what he'd found. He spent the rest of his life being glad he finally did. The projector hums. The room smells like cigarette smoke and ambition. Charles Laughton leans forward in his chair, elbows on his knees, a man who has played kings and monsters and broken men, and he is watching a screen test of a girl from Dublin. He watches her eyes. He sits back, slowly, the way a man sits back when something has happened that he wasn't expecting. Here is the story.